Hello, everyone, and welcome to our brand new podcast where we'll be talking mainly about movies and stuff that we've just watched, and even some stuff that we've watched before, like some older movies. Just want to kind of use a little bit of a platform just to talk about the things that we like, really. Most of you introduce yourself before.
Yes, I am Mohsin, otherwise known as Sundown. You might have seen, or maybe not have seen, my other content, usually revolving around One Punch Man, in a podcast with Grim Reaper, but also my own channel, Sundown Rider, where I covered a lot of different mangas, and I stopped. But since then, yeah, I've been thinking about making a podcast, and this is what we've come to. So we'll see how it goes. Now, the third of us will introduce herself.
Our special guest, D.
Hello, my name's Dee, and yeah, that's all I have to say.
Oh,
really.
wow. Okay. Yeah, great introduction.
Thanks.
So yeah, all three of us, just this last weekend we saw Spider-Man No Way Home. So we're just going to be talking about that. We're going to give a brief introduction, just kind of like spoiler free, just so you don't spoil it for yourself. So most of this video is going to be talking about kind of little details, little things that we thought were cool, some the things that we thought were not so cool. So if you haven't watched the movie, I recommend watching it before carrying on with the rest of this video. I'm gonna give my own introduction. Actually, I'm Saki, one of OG old, not really YouTubers, but AMV making YouTuber. Nah, not really.
That was the best introduction ever. It's like one of the OG, but actually, I'm not a YouTuber though. Like I am an OG though.
No,
I made
That was
a
better than
YouTube.
mine.
I made
Yeah,
YouTube videos before YouTubers were a thing. I think our first video uploaded on YouTube was in 2006. I checked. The videos that I've listed. I've got a couple of your videos on my channel as well, and I think it said the first video uploaded it is 2006, the Bardock one that I made. But yeah, all my videos are not listed anymore. They're all private and stuff like that. Copyright strikes and all that business. It's all gone. It's all gone. Got 30,000 views on one of my videos before. It's cool, but it's gone now. But anyway, yeah, going straight into the movie, right? So do you want to give a general kind of plot overline without spoiling it? Go for it.
yeah. We'll let's give like I think a general kind of idea of okay, this is how it started off. This is what the plot line was, and we won't talk too much yet about the main spoilers and things like that happened. So yeah, we'll just go through it, and D and I will correct you as you go along if you miss out anything. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the general plot is picking up from this one's called No Way Home, isn't it? This third one. It's picking up from the previous movie. What was the subtitle for that one? Because they all got home in it.
Homecoming.
There's Homecoming and Far From Home. So Far From Home is the one. So picking up from Far From Home. That's a bit of a mouthful. So at the end of the film, basically the whole film was about him fighting against Spider-Man fighting against Mysterio. But at the end, his identity gets revealed as Peter Parker being Spider-Man. And Daily Bugle, obviously getting this footage from Mysterio and his crew, just kind of exposing him and saying that he was the one that killed Mysterio, and that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and so the world's kind of out to get him. So the plot is the world's found out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and kind of the aftermath of that, he thought, it's gonna be okay. People are gonna know my identity, stuff like that. But then the difficulties from people knowing, like harassing him, like harassing the people that he loves and all that business. He eventually goes to Doctor Strange and ask him to put the world put it back to a point where nobody knew he was Spider-Man. But then
Yeah, it wasn't even that. It was make everybody forget that he was Spider-Man.
yeah, that's
But
right.
it wasn't
Yeah.
like, I don't think it was a returning the time kind of thing. It was more current time, but everyone forgets who he is.
That's right, yeah. So make everybody forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. but then he keeps on adding like extra people. Like, oh yeah, I don't want Mary Jane to forget. Well, I don't know what her name is. Michelle Jones is not Mary Jane, is
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
I don't want her to forget. I don't want Aunt May to forget everything. So adding on these extras onto the spell, Doctor Strange basically fucks it up. That's the best way you can call it. He fucks up the spell, and then like a whole bunch of multiverse stuff goes on. You got people from other universes, villains from other universes come in. So the general plot line is they have to deal with these villains and all the kind of shenanigans from all these people coming from the different universes into this Spider-Man's universe, and him having to kind of fix and basically fix everything, send them back to their universes. So that's the overarching kind of plot line, really. Unless you want to add anything in, but I think other than that, I think past this point, really, we're just going to be going into the film and just talking about what we liked, what we didn't like. So do you want to start that off, Monsi?
Yes, I think. Okay, so this is now going to be spoiler ridden. So if
start from the beginning, as we get into the film, like, what did you like? What didn't you like?
So let's think. So a last spoiler warning for those mandem who haven't clocked on yet. This is going to have spoilers. But okay, so the beginning we had is just kind of them showing them kind of applying for colleges or universities, and they didn't get into like MIT and stuff like this because of Peter Parker and his identity as Spider-Man and their affiliation with him. So that was Ned and MJ. So all that type of stuff, I was like, okay, this is cool. Just showing a little bit of their actual civilian lives as opposed to their hero / Avengers kind of thing. So all of that type of stuff, I was cool. But I think where things, and I think more than anything, it's good to say that I liked the movie. I thought it was a really good movie, and I think we all enjoyed it. It's probably the best out of the trilogy.
Yeah.
I mean, you and me have spoken about this before, like how I'm not the hugest fan, of this like new Spider-Man. Like I like Tom Holland good enough. Like to me, he's a bit like the kind of Spider-Man that we kind of grew up with, like the animated series and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and like you kind of see him in high school and then going to college and then like working for the Daily Bugle. So that's kind of the progression of his character that I like. But with this trilogy, or I think there's going to be more, possibly. I don't know if they signed on like Tom Holland for some more, but he's always in high school, and he's a bit of a younger like Spider-Man than what I would have liked to see on screen, but. And also that MIT application stuff, the uni application, that was a good like 15 minutes into the film, I think, because I think a lot of the beginning was around, him going onto the streets, without his mask and stuff like that, and like some people were like, 50% of the people were just like, yeah, man, Spider-Man, go for it, like he's this young guy, but the other 50% were all kind of like.
Throwing
tomatoes and all this business.
At him or whatever.
Yeah, harassing Aunt May, harassing like MJ and Ned for that matter. Although the funny part was they were with Ned. They were like, "Who are you?" So, I thought that was pretty funny.
Then Flash Thompson came out. He already had a book written and everything. That was pretty funny. I was like, "Yo, that's actually one thing I'm not so sure if I'm a fan of." Just like a really minor point. It's like I've never really addressed this with anybody. But the Flash Thompson in this MCU universe MCU universe, I think he's a little bit. He's not Flash Thompson for me. That's like
he's lackluster.
Yeah, he's very lackluster, and he's also like I don't remember if like Flash Thompson. He was meant to be like that typical jock type character. I think.
Like a bully. Like he's supposed to kind of build as well. Like he was definitely a jock. So. Yeah,
exactly. So like, and that's kind of what I was expecting, and instead they've got like this. What looks like this possibly Latino, maybe even Indian kid, and he's got like dyed hair. And I was like, bro, like, and he's
like
into
a hipster nerd
and stuff like this.
He's like a hipster nerd kind of character, which I thought was
that's Flash
so weird.
Yeah, I was like, nah, man, like that ain't no Flash Thompson for me. But it is what it is. But so that's how it started off. All that part was fine. I think I don't think any of that was like, it wasn't too long, it wasn't too short. It was just pretty decent kind of context provider, especially after what we'd seen in the last movie.
Yeah.
So then
Going back to Flash Thompson, actually, the interesting thing that I did like about the character, because from what I remember, in the original content, right, he was a fan of Spider-Man. Like, he had like a Spider-Man fan club. I can't remember because obviously there's like a million like iterations of like, you know, Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. I don't follow them, man. Like, I just remember we had like, you know, Spider-Man, the Ultimate Guide, and that kind of broke down like, you know, some of the like different kind of lines that were running at the same time, that, you know, like those comic books. But I'm pretty sure in like the mainline kind of Spider-Man universe, like Flash Thompson is supposed to be like he's meant to have like a Spider-Man fan club. So that was kind of cool to see that kind of that version of the adaptation kind of make it in a way, but in a weird form factor. Let's just say that.
So then the movie, I think, really started getting going when we come to the part where they're getting rejected by colleges. So Ned's getting rejected, MJ's getting rejected, and Peter's getting rejected as well. And it's all because of their affiliation and or being Spider-Man. So they all get rejected from, I think their final university was MIT, and they were just like, we're going to get in. MJ's like kind of setting this recurring theme throughout the movie of, if you always expect like failure and disappointment, you won't be disappointed when it comes. Which was like I was like, damn, son, like I get you're meant to be like this, you know, wall up type character, you know, this negative type character, but Jesus, man, like, come on. I was like, at least
it sounded like something I would say.
Yeah, but
going with the absolute bad worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
And then you won't be disappointed. That's what I usually always say.
Yeah. But it just felt a bit kind of like, especially with Tom Holland, they're like the complete opposite. I was like, yeah, like, I get that that's her character, but I was like, I'm not so sure if I'm a fan of that style of character where it's just like, you know, all doom and gloom. Especially when so far we've seen nothing to suggest why they should be so doomy and gloomy. Maybe there's something else going on, I don't know. But yeah, they all get rejected from MIT, and that's when Peter Parker thinks, he sees that little kind of wizard thing hanging off as the Christmas decorations in Zendaya's store, where she's like a cafe owner. So he goes to Doctor Strange. I'm not sure how he actually knew his location. He just kind of Google searched Doctor Strange, and he pops up as, oh, by the way, the Sorcerer Supreme is like just chilling in this location. So they go there, and the first thing we find out is that our boy Wong is actually Sorcerer Supreme and not Doctor Strange, which I thought made sense. Because, you know, in the 5 years that Doctor Strange had been blipped out of existence, they needed a Sorcerer Supreme, and that was our boy from Asia. But so the main point,
our boy,
our boy. Any Asian on the planet is just our boy.
That's the thing. Like, when you say Asian, like, you know, I think most people will think like China and Japan and stuff like that. We're Asian, man. We're from Pakistan. We're from, like, you know, Indians. They don't seem to be under the Asian like bracket, but we're Asians, you know. But
yeah, I've had this conversation with people from Florida and my American friends before, which is,
we're
you know,
Asians, man.
It's oh yeah, by the way, you know, I'm Asian, and they'll look at you like, wait a sec, like Asian as in like the Oriental side, and you're just like, no, okay. So this is where like we go into a totally different conversation of how they messed up the definition of Asian, man, because Asia is so huge. You go from like the Middle East, which is like the West East, I think, because it's not really middle.
The West East.
Yeah, it's not really middle. Yes, I don't even know what you would define as middle of the East. But you go from like that side all the way down to, I don't even know what the the furthermost point of the east side of Asia is. Like, I don't know what that is. It'd
Maybe
be further away than
Korea or something.
Yeah.
Korea, Japan. Because then right underneath is like, I don't know my geography obviously very well, but you got underneath, you got Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
and that's China, like Australasia. So.
No.
Okay. What about Thailand and these?
No, they're before.
Thailand that's south, isn't it? They're more.
They're a bit down. More. They're west, a bit more west. They're like, I think they're east of like India and stuff like that.
All right, cool. But bottom line is, Asia is huge and doesn't just mean Korea, Japan, and China.
Yes.
That's been my PSA. But yeah. So then the main plot line kind of starts to unfold when he actually meets Doctor Strange, and he's like, "All right, dude, look, my life's been horrific, and people around me, their lives have been horrific." And Doctor Strange is like, you know what? I can't really change I can't really cast a spell to change all of that, because that's not what we do here. We don't just change things because a person comes up to us and says, "Oh, by the way, my life's shit."
Yeah. I mean, the point he was bringing, I think, is more about because the whole Avengers saga, especially at the end, was about changing time, going through time using the time stone, and reversing and changing events. And they were basically like, who gives a shit? We're in such a bad situation. We can deal with any repercussions that come with messing with time, because that was the whole thing. And that's kind of what they were saying. Like, I don't have the time stone, and even if I did, I don't think we want to meddle with time. But then, what was it? One come up with the suggestions, just saying. I think he made like an offhand comment, about forgetting, and then I think Doctor Strange was like, "I can make people forget." So that was the basis of the spell, really. Like, so instead of changing time, it was, I'll make you a spell and make everybody forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where we'll start off with kind of that part of the movie, because I was like, okay, cool. Like, I like that concept in terms of people forgetting. But even from the trailer, which I tried to avoid like the plague, but we saw that the spell messed up in some way, shape, or form. Now, they made it look in the trailer like the spell messed up in like a horrific way, like he couldn't contain it and it just exploded out, and then like mirror universe kind of thing, and everyone's falling and crying and things like this. But that's not exactly what happened. Is when he's casting the spell, he actually contains it and he puts it into that little cube thing. So he didn't actually mess up like horrifically. But the basis of the spell was, all right, I'm gonna make everyone forget. And this is the part of the movie where I was like, I get it. Like, there has to be, what's it called? You have to suspend belief, or is it suspension of disbelief? One of those two. You have to suspend an element of like being realistic when you're writing these stories and things like that. But when Doctor Strange is casting this spell, Peter Parker obviously has addendums he wants to make. He's like, actually, wait, I don't want everyone to forget. I've got my girlfriend, I've got Ned, I've got Aunt May, the Avengers, all this type of stuff. Like, Doctor Strange, you can't forget that I'm Peter Parker or Spider-Man, because if you cast a spell and then you see me here, you might like try and one-shot me because you don't know who I am, and I'm in the middle of the Sorcerer Supreme.
At the very least, Doctor Strange the dumbass, right? Like, he didn't think about, oh yeah, I don't want to forget that this guy's Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Like, he didn't add himself in. Like, he like relied on Peter Parker, and he's like, wait, you obviously don't want to forget that he's Spider-Man, so why didn't you add that in? Like, are you dumb, bro? Like,
are you dumb?
As they say,
are you dumb, Carl?
Are you dumb, bro?
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially because it's such a big spell in terms of, it's a large population of people who are going to forget that he's Spider-Man.
Was everybody? It's not a large population. Everybody.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like not normally you would have this type of kind of discussion. Okay, so like at least plan exactly. Do you want anyone to remember, stuff like that? Have a little discussion before you just jump in head first to do the spell.
I'm gonna make this spell. Yeah, we'll just carry on going.
Just you roll with it.
Yeah. So yeah, like Adila was saying, you have Doctor Strange, who's meant to be like, highly educated, a surgeon, the type of person who you'd think before he does something. And he's not even like a minor surgeon, like a repair a hernia, or if you have a toenail bust, as if that's minor surgery. But the guy was like a brain surgeon or a neurosurgeon or something like that. So I'm like, all right, cool. This guy should be the guy who understands, all right, I need to understand. This is where business analysis knowledge comes in. I need to understand the requirements and the kind of context of what I'm doing before I go ahead and do something. I'm not going to go ahead and perform surgery without realizing that this guy's motor cortex might be damaged or whatever, his amygdala or whatever it might be. He should be that guy that understands, all right, I need the context, I need the requirements, all that good stuff. But he just goes in and he's like, all right, cool, we're going to get everyone to forget, yeah. And then he like puts his little circle thing across and he's like, all right, good, let's go, brother. And then obviously Peter Parker's just like, oh yeah, cool, cool. But then in the style of this kind of naive Peter Parker, he's just stuttering his way through. He's like, oh, wait a sec, my MJ, Aunt May, Ned, my mama,
My mother, my father, my
"Oh,
sister, my brother, and you're like, what? Like,
yeah, so I was like, dude, man, like, come on. Because then the thing is, after the first time when he's like, okay, MJ needs to remember, Strange is like, all right, cool, I'll make that change. And then he's like, actually, wait, Ned needs to remember. And he's like,
Happy.
bro. I'm like, bro, after the second time, you should have just
Stop
cut
the
the
spell.
spell short. Yeah, like, cut the spell short and be like, all right,
Make a
look,
list.
yeah, make a list, my G, because like the entire world at the moment, that's something else we actually forgot. Like the entire world actually knows about Peter Parker in the sense of even London knows about it. They're talking about him. They have grievances because he was like fighting on Tower Bridge or something like that.
Yeah.
So that they're filing their grievances for like, hey, you messed up the paintwork on Tower Bridge, and we need that back. So yeah, so there was all that, but essentially the first part of the story and the way it was kind of the way it unfolded, I didn't like in the sense of Doctor Strange couldn't just sit down for a sec and say, "Yo, like let me just write down the names of the people you don't want to forget." And Peter Parker's also like 50% responsible for not bringing up the fact that, hey, by the way, there are people I need to know that I'm Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the people need to forget.
It would be a nice to have, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also funny because it's not like they're under pressure in terms of time, or they're not getting whooped by other like villains at the time. So
Yeah.
they had time to do it. And yeah, I understand like Peter Parker, he has obviously the university that he could have appealed with as well, which was another point that we could make
Yeah.
Oh
or
man.
college, whatever it was. But they weren't under any pressure, so it's not like they had like a time restraint to do the spell with it. So he had time to sit down and actually had that discussion. We just chose not to.
That was the most like one of the most stupidest scenes. I forgot about that actually. That was actually one of the most stupidest scenes in the whole thing. Is just like, oh man, like you know, you didn't even call up the university to kind of you know appeal or anything, and he was just like no, and then he kicks him out the. As, what I found like really strange though about that whole thing was like you know he basically fucked up the spell, and then stored it in some kind of glass cube. Or I always remember when he kind of contained the whole spell.
Yeah.
And he didn't even do that well either because like there was still some leakage in the
Yeah.
multiverse, and that's where the rest of the plot I suppose comes in. So after that whole experience with Doctor Strange, you had villains from the other universe, the other Spider-Man universes. They came into this Peter Parker's universe, and so I can't remember how he comes across the first one, if I'm honest. So what happens directly after the, you know, when he gets kicked out of Doctor Strange's
So he found
like abode?
he found
his
our
house?
boy Flash Thompson. Actually not our boy. We don't like this Flash Thompson. But he found Flash Thompson and he's like, hey, I found out you can actually call like the exception, the what's it called?
Principal,
the
head mistress, whatever the.
the recruiter for basically MIT and their team.
I thought it was just
So
the
he
principal.
called-
How did you know it's the recruit? I thought it was literally just the.
It's something to do with like the
Whoever runs the university.
admissions team. It was the admissions team.
Oh right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So he calls up Flash saying, "Yo, you're at this party. Is this admissions lady there?" And he's like, "Nah, she left for the airport." So then we get the kind of start of the story, which is Peter goes, I'm gonna go to this bridge where I know she is, going towards this airport." He finds her in a car, knocks on her window and goes, "Hey, my G, me, my friends need to come to MIT." And she was like, "Hey, look, man, I don't know if I can do that." And then Dr. Octopus rolls up, and I was like, "Damn, cuz." So like that's when the movie started getting going.
Dude, he looks so good. I know that they must have had some CG on him because he's quite old now. Although he looks good for his age, Alfred
Yeah.
Molina. But my God, man, was it good seeing him like that? Like to me, like that's probably the best Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 2. You know, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2. And just to see him again was like amazing. Like you know, and just the whole fight with him was absolutely badass. You know, like it was basically the Tom Holland Spider-Man versus Doc Ock, and then just gotten completely at it. You know, with Spider-Man with his metallic suit, is like, you know, robotic suit with the spider arms popping out and everything. That's a cool reference as well, because obviously he's going against Dr. Octopus, who has his own kind of robot tentacle kind of thingies.
Yeah.
And how, you know, the battle kind of like, what were the interesting points that like came out to you in the fight? Because for me, like the thing I'm thinking about when I think about that fight is the nanobots of Spider-Man's suit going onto his arms, and then he's able to take control of basically the whole of Dr. Octopus.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was like the kind of highlight for me. But what else did you like about that fight?
So yeah, the nanoparticles thingy, the nanobots. I really like that, because I like the not necessarily like the power of it and the technology itself. That was pretty cool, but I liked how it showed up on like his wrist. Like he's got a playbook kind of thing, and it just shows up as like a Bluetooth pairing device.
His
I thought
hood,
that was pretty funny.
his hood thing, yeah, that HUD thing.
Yeah,
Heads up
HUD,
display.
and it just turns out it was like, oh, pairing, and I was like, what? It just pairs like a normal, like he's pairing up from Sony headphones or something like that. So I thought that was pretty funny. I really liked how how they showed it as well. They had like the Spidey colors going across the arms of Dr. Octopus, and I thought that it looked really cool. I was like, man, if you could keep that color scheme, that would be so sick.
Yeah, that looked cool. Although it was a bit Iron Man-ish, if you ask me.
Yeah, it turned like
it was red and gold. Like,
yeah,
that's the one thing that I didn't quite like. Like you know, like I know D, you were saying that you liked the Spider-Man suit. I'm not the hugest fan of the kind of Tony Stark era suits that he's gotten. You know, like these robotic suits. They look nice, like, you know, the metallic sheen. But like, you know, a lot of the blues gone, like they're focusing more on like the darker blue colors.
That's true.
And I'm more of a fan of the kind of original scheme. Like there's other suits that are like amazing as well. Like, you know, throughout like the Spider-Man kind of lore, like, you know, the ultimate was it the Ultimate 99? I can't remember. I think
the 2099.
2099. Yeah. That suit looks cool. I mean, there's all sorts of suits. Like even like some of the Spider-Man games that we used to play back in the day on PS1. Like, you know, they'd have like unlockable suits. And,
like a Captain Universe suit or something like that as well.
Yeah, Captain Universe suit, and I think Captain Marvel or something. Actually, I can't remember if it's Captain Universe or Captain Marvel, but yeah, like all sorts of suits. But not the hugest fan of the Tony Stark era kind of suits. They're just like Iron Man suits with a Spider-Man coat of paint, really, almost.
Yeah, I think they look cool, but obviously they're not like traditionally like Spider-Man looking. Like his other suits are more blue, obviously, but yeah, I still think it looks cool. Especially
because at the end they popped out the original color scheme.
Yeah,
and I thought that was awesome. Like they didn't really give like they did this like you know, when I used to watch Smallville, they did that at the end as well. Like the thing that people were looking forward to the most was seeing him wear the Superman costume, and they did it from a distance. Kind of thing, from what I remember. Like I remember them, like, you know, showing it from like a distance, the suit, and like a little bit closer, but I can't remember. But for the most part, it was. And they did the same here. They did it while he was swinging, so everything was blurred. You couldn't really see, like, you know, how kind of. I was trying to see how kind of accurate it looked like compared to the suit that I remembered. You know, like the lighter tone of blue and, like, you know, the proper like red shade that he usually has. But yeah, after that, he basically takes control of Dr. Octopus's tentacles and, you know, captures him. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you have the Green Goblin bomb appear.
Yeah.
And that explodes. And then it was at this point he gets transported, right, by Doctor Strange into this kind of cave.
No, not yet.
Was that not? I'm pretty sure that's when it happens. So the bomb explodes. What happens straight after that bomb explodes? I'm pretty sure that's when he gets transported into the cave, and then Dr. Octopus also gets put into the kind of the glass prison.
That's what I thought happened.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I was gonna say, like, they obviously he saved the MIT lady as well, and then
he saved MIT lady.
That was all part of the fight.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, I'ma reconsider everything."
Yeah, that's stupid.
Your friend's application.
I was fearing for my life, right? I'm gonna take my time to get out my car, even though my car is mashed, and I'm going to reconsider your application to MIT, and you're just there like,
Well,
Bitch,
it's
get
'cause
out.
she realized, as part of the admissions team, he's not some vagabond villain kind of thing. Yeah, he's actually a proper hero, and that the whole population is kind of split on like, is he a hero? Is he not?
Yeah, do
The
that
whole
over a
world is
phone call. Don't do that there and
I
then.
mean, yeah, but he can't show her he's a hero over his phone call. He can't
No,
like
no,
show
no,
his
I don't mean that. I'm
Avengers
saying
ID.
do one, run your ass
Yeah.
out, get the hell out of the way. It's dangerous over here, right? Like
Yeah.
she's gonna go and throw a handbag on like Alfred Molina's face. That's what I thought she was gonna do. Like instead, she decided to give him a finger wagging. Like, oh yeah, like that's what you get for coming after me, kind of thing. But I was just like,
It's way
phone
too
him up
chill
later
for-
and say that I don't think you're a bad person, and I think that. But she did it right there. She's like, I'll phone up your friends as well. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, straight after that, he gets like we were saying, the Green Goblin's bomb pops out of nowhere, and I didn't actually know Willem Dafoe was gonna be in the film. That was the surprise for me. They tried to ruin this film so much for me during trailers. We talked about this before,
Yeah.
but they had a thumbnail, and I made you avoid it, even though I think you already knew he was gonna be in the film. But they had a thumbnail with Willem Dafoe. I can't actually. I don't think. I think Willem Dafoe was in it, but I didn't actually see that part of it. They had Alfred Molina, and they had Jamie Foxx, and I was like, "You assholes!" Like, I didn't want to know anything about the film. I knew it was gonna have something to do with like the multiverse and all that, but I didn't want to. I wanted that to be a surprise, and that's like just like an overarching rant. I hate trailers, man. They just completely ruin films for me nowadays. I try to avoid them, and even now we go to cinema. Me and you, we actually were looking down on our nachos. I can't remember what was it. The Spider-Man trailer? No, it was Matrix, I think.
Matrix, yeah.
Yeah, the Matrix
No,
Resurrection.
we were avoiding the Spider-Man trailer, but we were watching something else. We were watching.
The Dune?
Dune. Yeah,
Or was it James Bond or something?
we were watching
I
Dune.
think James Bond. Yeah,
Yeah.
James Bond, I think it was.
But yeah, I think we were watching. It was either James Bond or No Time to Die or Dune. But we were actively looking at our nachos to try and avoid getting spoiled, and we were trying our best to ignore all the sounds and stuff coming from the trailers because they've had so many of them and just completely ruined the film. Like, any surprise element that you might have had, they're just like, forget it. We don't want no surprise element. We want you to know exactly what's gonna happen. But yeah, I mean, I suppose going back to the movie. So going back to they basically, Doctor Strange transports him into this kind of cave, transports Spider-Man to this cave, and he puts Alfred Molina, Doc Ock, into kind of like a glass cage inside this cabin. And the overarching story being at this point in the film, there's other multiverse villains that have come through, villains that know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Right, and I think that's accurate. Like, so all the villains that showed up in this film, I think they all knew that. Actually, I'm not sure if Electro did.
I think he might have done, because the idea was like, people were supposed to forget that he was Spider-Man. So it's people that was it people that knew Spider-Man, or was it people that knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker?
I thought Spider-Man was Peter Parker, but I might be wrong.
It was one of the two, but essentially a whole bunch of villains come over. Doctor Strange is already injured when he brings Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus back, because he was fighting the lizard in the sewers. So the lizard was in the movie.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, lizard was captured as well. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he's behind one of these glass cages. So the kind of immediate part of the story now being, you got to go and find these villains, and I'm going to give you this special kind of web thing, which transport them into the glass cage.
It instantly turns into like a Legend of Zelda game. It's like, all right, you got a whole bunch of side quests. So you got to go and like find all these villains and stuff like this. You got to go help the old lady cross the street, all that type of stuff. So I thought that was pretty funny. It basically becomes an RPG.
So what does he do? He goes to find, like, they go that there's some kind of disturbance. They're saying people that saw, they saw some kind of disturbance or something going on next to these pylons.
Before that, what he does is he says, I'm gonna go and like get all these villains and stuff like that, but I need my team. So he gets Zendaya and Ned. He gets them over into the Sorcerer Supreme's lair, and then they go down into the basement and stuff like that. But they have like the torture device, and it's like, actually that's a Pilates machine.
Yeah, what
So
I
they
liked was when they went to the cages, right? You had the device which is controlling Doc Ock's arms, just lying there right in front of him. He didn't use it or anything like to break out
Yeah.
for a first time. But usually when they show something like that, you're just like, oh man, he's just gonna break himself out, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought something like that was gonna happen. It's such a weird like they had that camera angle like a couple times where they would pan from like one of these. It wasn't really a glass cage. It was like his magic, Doctor Strange's magic was like blocking them from exiting the cage. But they'd pan out always to like that device with the HUD showing.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you've paired up with Doc Ock's arms. So I was like, why do they keep showing that? Like, there's got to be some sort of plot point where he breaks out and he unpairs his arms, and then he's like, "Aight, time to clap cheeks." But that never happened.
Clap cheeks. But yeah, that for once that didn't happen. That usually does. But yeah, so he goes after like he sets up NJ and Ned. They're like on a video call with him. They're strapped up to his chest for no reason whatsoever. I'm just like, why is it strapped up so that the audience can see? The guy's gonna have to literally do this to see, to see them.
But it wasn't so that he could see them.
So
it was
they
more
can
that
see.
so he could hear them and they could see what he was seeing.
Yeah.
But I was like, surely
that was
like
just a dumb kind of.
How do you make that?
Yeah, a bit nitpicky, but like I was just like, for one thing, why would you use your front camera? But that's a different story. But yeah, he's going to find like there's like a bit of a disturbance going on. Public's kind of said there's some crap going down next to these kind of foresty area where there's like pylons and stuff. And surprise, it's Electro.
But actually, first one we see is Sandman.
No. You see a little bit of sand rising up, but you don't actually see Sandman. Remember?
Yeah.
Do you not? Okay.
Yeah. Remember, I said to you, I was like, I actually said to you, I was like, oh, look, it looks like it might be Sandman.
He comes mid-fight.
Okay.
Yeah, he comes mid-fight to protect him. Remember when he like blasts him? So whole fight kicks off. Really cool one between Electro, who in this universe has managed to gain like a physical form. So it's basically Jamie Foxx. So he's like really hyped up about that. So Electro in this is really hyped up about the fact that in this universe he has like a full body, humanoid form rather than. I think in the Amazing Spider-Man films, he was like, his form was made up of electricity, wasn't it? Like blue electricity. So so he's really hyped up about that. So they have a fight, Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man versus Electro, and then Sandman comes out of nowhere, and he thinks it's the Peter Parker from his universe, and he tries to protect him. So yeah, really cool fight. And to make a long story short, he captures Electro. And he also captures Sandman as well, and they get put into separate glass prisons, those glass cages. So yeah, that was pretty cool. So they get captured in their glass prisons. So yeah, what happens after that?
So yeah, Sandman gets captured. Dr. Ock gets captured. Dr. Ock has already been captured. Electro gets captured. So then he hears that they're searching for Green Goblin, and he hears that he's somewhere downtown near where his Aunt May works. So he runs down, finds Aunt May, and sees that she's working. She seems to be working in like some sort of hostile type of environment where she helps like, I'm not sure, unfortunate people, whether it be mental health related issues, or whether I wasn't sure whether there was like homelessness or anything like that, or maybe it might have been a combination of all of those things. So we see when Peter Parker enters this building and he's in a rush looking for Aunt May to see if she's safe. She's sat there with Norman Osborn, but in his Norman Osborn state, not in his Green Goblin state. So she's talking to him and like really trying to help him out, trying to sort out like any issues he has, and he's there like Norman Osborn worried about Harry Osborn because he's thinking about, I'm in a different universe. I don't know where I am. Where's my son? Oscorp doesn't exist here. What's going on, my guy? So this is the part of the movie where I feel the seeds of the major part of this movie, which I didn't like, was sown.
The seeds of bullshit. You mean?
Yeah, the BS, which was Aunt May she walks over to Peter and she's like, "Look, dude, this dude is completely lost, and we need to do what's within our power to kind of help him." And I think it was at this point, I'm not sure if I remembered it correctly, but Peter says something along the lines of, that's not our responsibility.
Yeah, we just want to send them back to their universe. That should sort out everything.
Yeah, and she kind of just looks at him, like squares up to him, like, "Yo, my G, yo, cause it's our responsibility. Yeah, if he needs help, cause it doesn't
we need
matter
to
which
rehabilitate
universe
them.
he's from."
That was it. Or we need to rehabilitate them. I was like, bitch, like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
So that's where the seeds were sown, and that kind of goes on into the rest of the movie. That's a major plot line for the rest of the movie, and it's a plot line that I didn't like because I was just like, we'll get into it. So essentially, he takes Norman Osborn back, but he takes him back via a truck or something like that. Like they drive there, and they were they followed by Jonah
Daily
Jameson?
Bugle, yeah. So Daily Bugle followed them. Nothing really came of that, if I'm honest. I thought they were gonna like break in and like let them loose and stuff like
Yeah.
that. They just followed him just to see where he was going.
Yeah, actually, it was someone from the Daily Bugle. It wasn't Jonah Jameson.
No,
Just
that's
an
something.
iron.
Yeah. So somebody
Yeah.
from Daily Bugle, but they were kind of calling up Jonah Jameson and saying, "Yeah, he's here" and all this business. So yeah, well, it was at this point, right, that they're all kind of just they're making like all these references and stuff, right? Because I think Doctor Strange put I think he put Green. Did he put Green Goblin into one of the last cages?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So so all of the villains are basically from the different universes are in the cages now at this point. And your favorite line, "I'm something of a scientist myself."
Yeah. So this part was really cool. Not just because he because that was kind of at the end of the conversation, or towards the end of the conversation, where like they're discussing things about rehabilitation and stuff like that. I think it was at that point, and Doc Ock and Norman Osborn are just kind of there, like, "Hey, actually, like we know a thing about engineering, science, bioengineering, and stuff like that as well." That's when he came out with the, "Hey kid, I'm something of a scientist myself," and everyone was like, "Yo, they got the meme in. This is legit."
Yeah.
So that was hilarious. But what I thought was really, really cool about this scene, before we go on into like the negatives of the story, and it might be an issue with writing, I'm not sure how it works, but the cool part of this scene for me was how the villains were interacting. I thought that was sick because like they all have different universes, different Peter Parkers, and they're just talking to each other, kind of roasting each other at some points. Alfred Molina's just like telling Norman Osborn, "But you dead, son? How you here?"
He's like, "I'm not dead." I think that's where they all come to the realization that they've been transported into this universe for some reason, which wasn't really explained. But they were all transported at the moment which they were about to get killed in their universe.
Apart from Norman Osborn, for some reason. Because I don't think, for starters, he didn't look like I don't remember him saying, "Oh yeah, I was guiding my glider back into me and I transported," or something like that. Because he knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but he didn't make mention. I don't think he made mention of particular story because he was in Norman Osborn form at that point. So we don't know if he was transported at the moment of death. But the Lizard, I think, was. Everybody else was, I think, apart from Sandman, because he wasn't at a point in death, was he? Because he was let go by Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Only some of them, now you think about it, right? I don't think the Lizard had a story. Like where did he?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point as well, because he wasn't human, so he didn't get like.
He didn't get killed.
Yeah, he didn't get killed either, because Andrew Garfield.
So they messed that up slightly, because they were trying to insinuate, right, that all of these guys died, but when you think about it, no, they didn't. I don't think Electro did either.
I don't think that's an oversight, because they specifically didn't have those guys tell their story as well. So it was only Dr. Octopus. He was like, "And then I was the sun was in the palm of my hand, and then."
No, but did Electro die? I can't remember.
Yeah, Electro was saying he was absorbing all that data, and he was about to go into overdrive, and then he was like, "And then
that's
I was about to die." Shit, and
that's fine. But did he? I can't remember whether he actually did die in the Amazing Spider-Man. If you know what I mean.
I can't remember. No, I think Spider-Man just kind of he In that
diffusing
recap
kind
we
of thing.
watched, didn't he dissipate his energy?
Yeah,
He just
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
That's what I
moved
mean.
over
Yeah. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a bit strange as well. But basically, they got at the moment where they were about to get their ass kicked or something like that by their universe's Spider-Man. They got transported into this Peter Parker's universe, the Tom Holland one. So, like, once again, they're adding some bit into it where this Peter Parker was just like, if I send them back, they're gonna die. So maybe Aunt May's right. I need to cure these guys. I need to rehabilitate them, despite the fact that they couldn't be rehabilitated and cured in their own universes, technically, apart from the Lizard, right? So yeah, he's gonna do everything in his power to kind of cure, and that's where he gets into conflict with Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange comes back and he says, "Yeah, you got them all back. We're gonna send them straight back using this new found spell that he's got, which is actually I think it was the old spell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That he was gonna release, and I think do something with it, and he released it, and that will make everything better again. That'll send them back to their universes, and that's it. Everything's fixed." But then, obviously, because of Aunt May's moral message saying, "Oh yeah, man, like we're here to help people," he takes that box, runs with it, and then Doctor Strange starts chasing Spider-Man, and like because he's saying that no, we need to fix them before we send them back, otherwise they're just gonna go there to die.
So let's focus on that point for a second. So
Yeah.
that whole part, even when I was watching it, I was like dying inside because I was like, this is such a stupid plot point for me. Like I just don't think this is something that realistically, obviously, like it's a story, it's Marvel comics, whatever. But you have to, the viewer has to be able to follow along with the decision and say, okay, that's a decision I can understand. Or that I would make, so I can understand that it was made. I wouldn't have made it, but I can understand that it was, or I would have made the same decision. And I feel like a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, I understand. I would have made the same decision." And I'm just like, "Yeah, but think about it for a sec. What essentially happens is Spider-Man, Peter Parker says, I'm not going to send these guys back to their universe to die." I'm like, "Okay, cool, I get it. You're a hero, you all that type of stuff. You don't want to send them back to die. But the alternative is, I'm going to keep them here and try to rehabilitate them. Should I fail, which you don't know the likelihood of, because the reality is you don't know any of these guys. As soon as you release their barriers, they might all gang up on you, kill MJ, kill Ned, and then you're suddenly in a predicament where your friends have died because you were being a little bit too kind of kind-hearted." It's like, first off, he can kill. There's that element of trust. You don't know any of these guys, and for some reason you believe in the back of your mind, wait a sec, these guys didn't deserve to die in their other universes. And it's like, actually, wait a sec, if they were fighting against Spider-Man in their other universes, chances are they had no other choice.
Well, especially because
he wanted to give them a second chance, didn't he? So
Well, especially because I remember we were talking with you, Dee. We were talking. We were saying that it kind of sounds like he's kind of buffing them, and in doing so, if he sent them back into their own universes by helping them out, not necessarily curing them, that means they'd probably kick the crap out of their universe's Spider-Man.
Well, only with like really one of them. I mean, if Green Goblin doesn't get any buff because he loses all of his like super strength, Electro loses all of his
No, because it wasn't made clear at that point in the film, right, that they were gonna cure them. He just said we're gonna help them. Remember? Like,
yeah, kind of like.
And I was just like, help them in what way? Are you gonna like help them become more powerful? Are you like, what is this business?
Yeah.
And it makes absolutely no sense, especially because like the number one thing I hate, and this, is when I say like you've built up a character. We're looking at you, Star Wars. Yeah, you've built up a character. It's very familiar. It's ingrained into a person's memory, right? How a character is supposed to be. It's not subverting expectations. You spent multiple films explaining a character and how this person would react, where the fans almost know, and even the actors, right, who are playing these roles, almost know the characters more than the people who are creating these films. Yeah, because they've done such a good job through, all the content, all the films, all the everything, right? We're looking at you, Luke Skywalker.
We're talking about you, Luke.
Yeah.
And how they messed you up.
Yeah.
They messed you up completely, Luke.
And how Mark Hamill warned everybody as well.
Yeah.
He was just like, don't watch these films, almost. Like, he basically said it without saying it. I think at some point he did actually say it, but like, they've built up all this lore for this Spider-Man in Avengers and his own Spider-Man films, where it's like you don't want to be messing with universes anymore. You've had enough of that shit in Avengers. And then he proceeds to say, you know what, let's tweak this a little bit and let's have a bit of fun. I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Like despite what your Aunt May saying, right, just don't mess with anything, man. Like this multiverse stuff is just gonna go crazy. So, which it has done.
And I feel like something else which has been in the Spider-Man films as well as the Avengers films is, first off, in the first Spider-Man film, it was don't bite off more than you can chew. So don't try and be too much of a hero. Understand that your role, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man at that point, but understand your role. Understand that you don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Was against the Vulture and stuff like that. But then in the Avengers movies, it's like, all right, don't meddle with time. We have to do it in this one situation because half of the universe is wiped out. But even then, we really don't like the idea of meddling with time. But then it's also, what happens if super powerful individuals are left to their own devices, like Thanos from the other universe coming into the current timeline in the MCU, all that type of stuff, and then all the damage he caused, all that type of stuff. It's like, okay, if you grant a super powerful individual the ability to kind of do that, you're gonna endanger the lives of hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and that's the biggest issue that I had with this. In this movie, what Peter Parker decides is, to honor these villains, I'm gonna try and rehabilitate them. That's what we do. That's what Spider-Man does. That's what Aunt May does.
Since when?
That's the more inspiring.
That was my big question. Since when?
But first off, it was since when? Since when were you about rehabbing villains? But then the second thing was, he quite literally endangered the entire city that he's living in, simply because he was like, I want to rehab these guys. So it's like, okay, but you have to balance the benefits versus the risks over here. And it's like, okay, so I can try to rehabilitate these guys, but if things go wrong, which we have no idea whether they can or not, because of the fact that we don't know these guys, we don't know their histories, we don't know how clever they are. That 2 of them are Oscorp scientists who he has no idea what Oscorp is or who Oscorp are. But we know that they have military grade level scientists basically with them, i.e. Norman Osborn and Dr. Octavius. So he's like, all right, cool. I'm going to trust in the fact that I can stop these guys should they go wild. If all of them go wild at the same time, you can't. And we saw a little bit of that. We saw just what would happen if the Lizard and Norman Osborn clapped him. And they did clap him. So basically he endangered his entire city, possibly even his entire country, because he released basically the Sinister Six, and they didn't all comply. In fact, it was only Norman Osborn who didn't comply because he shifted back into his Green Goblin form. And then we saw Jamie Foxx in his Electro form. He decided, nah, I actually don't want to comply. I want to take power because of Norman Osborn's speech or Green Goblin speech. So that's the part of the story where I was like, I'm not convinced that Spider-Man, Peter Parker, would have made that decision. And I feel this is one of those parts in a story where a decision has been written in, but it's not the decision the character would have made.
Yeah.
Even though, we know that this Spider-Man is naive, but I don't think he's so naive where he'd endanger the lives of his entire city, his entire country, to try and just to save the lives of known villains that he knows are villains. They tried to kill him to begin with, and they tried to kill their other Spider-Men from their universe. And he's like, no, you know what? I'd rather try and save you and endanger everybody else's life than send you back to your universe where you were gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, I don't think he would have made that.
Yeah. If you really wanted to play devil's advocate, you can say that, well, he doesn't know the villains. He doesn't know how evil they are, how bad they are, their situations and all that. All he knows is that they're people from different universes. The only thing I would say to that is that just doesn't resonate with me particularly. Obviously, some people might look at this and say, actually, no, I really like that plot point. It just didn't resonate with me at all. The whole morality aspect, some people might even say he did cure, for example, Lizard, he was cured, but that was out of necessity. That was more of, I need to defeat this guy. So in order to do that, it wasn't like a morality thing. in order to, you know, make myself and make the universe feel at peace, I had to, you know, cure the lizard back into Dr. Connor's. No, it's like, no, this is the most efficient way the best way to defeat the lizard is by turning him back, you know, all that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, up to this point, what do you think? Like, you know, this whole, I think the point of the film that we gotten up to at this point is he's run away with the kind of cube. So, yeah, what do you think about that whole? Oh yeah, I've got to cure these. I've got to rehab these villains.
Well, I think that part especially, well, part though he's actually fixing people, I think that was a bit weird. But the thing just before that, when he is fighting Doctor Strange and the whole mirror world scene was really fun. I think that was really cool to look at as well. And then also like Doctor Strange pushing him out of his body, that was really cool. Yeah, do you guys have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was really cool because I said to you that was just giving me straight up, well, the Doctor Strange movie for one thing vibes, but I was saying to you, it actually gave me Inception vibes.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Just the whole chase scene, the kind of you know, the astral kind of ghost kind of thing that, you know, he pushes out Peter Parker's like soul in a way. They didn't really explain. I'm guessing it's because of his spider senses, right? His body, like how when it was just his body and there was no soul into it, he was managing to dodge Doctor Strange, and like, you know, keep the box like, you know, with the spell away from him. They didn't explain it, but I assume it's because of his spider sense reflexes. But even that, I was like,
I was speaking to Adila about this yesterday, and I was like, what I'm understanding is that, like, you know, his soul got pushed out of his body, but his unconscious mind is still operating, and his spidey sense, because it works unconsciously, he's still dodging. But I was like, but is that how the soul works? Like, if your soul's been ejected, your body, like, there's no unconscious part of it left. Like, your soul's been ejected, every part of you should have been ejected.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So I'm just like, unless the soul here represents like his conscious mind has been separated from his body. But then I'm like, but that's nitpicking at this point. You're saying, oh, his conscious side was separated.
Yeah. That wasn't really an important part of the plot, really. But it was just interesting. Like, also, like, you know, you got to think about the fact that, you know, time has stopped as well. Like, it wasn't just the fact that he's pushed out his soul. It was like a kind of time stop situation. I don't know how that works. Like, you know, don't know the lore enough or anything like that, or anything enough about Doctor Strange to understand even half of that stuff. But it was just an interesting kind of take on that. So yeah, the whole chase scene basically concludes. Unless it was awesome. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to talk about in the chase scene, but it kind of concludes with Peter Parker essentially trapping him in that kind of was it in the mirror dimension itself, or was it
he traps Doctor Strange in the mirror world. And I just think, before we go on, I just think, to begin with, Marvel have done such a sick job of representing that mirror world. The first time we saw it in Doctor Strange, that movie, I was like, yo, this looks sick. And then in this movie as well, like the train scene, how everything was unfolding, they're falling through the sky into the sea. It looks so.
The buildings kind of like they look like sound waves almost. You know, like the way that the buildings come up, and like I think there's like a train as well. Like it was so cool.
It just looked so good, and they've done such a good job of that. And that's actually one of my the scenes that I really like are those scenes where I see like their creativity and how they're like mirroring everything.
It looks like abstract art. You know what I mean? Like you know, they've got like some symmetrical kind of circle stuff going on. Like, you know, like they got all sorts of wave patterns going on as well. Like it was quite trippy, and that's the whole thing. That's what it's supposed to be. But yeah, it was awesome. But
I'm not sure.
When
Karen.
Yes, I was gonna say. So that point is when he also gets his ring taken off him as well.
Yeah, and that's how he basically traps him, doesn't he? He takes his or I don't know, that ring kind of helps open up like portals and stuff. But yeah, he takes the ring off of him, and like, so he traps Doctor Strange into that like mirror dimension, and he ends up going back to his mates, MJ and Ned, and I mean, I can't remember what happens at this point. He basically breaks the villains out of their cages, and he takes him to his apartment, like, you know, the apartment that they've moved into now that, you know, people have been harassing them at their home. So so it's Happy's apartment, isn't it? So they go to there, and in that apartment they then proceed to then try to fix these guys. So I think the first person they try to fix is Doc Ock, right? So they do an analysis on him, and it's really cool because you get to see Peter Parker, Norman Osborn, and, you know, Doc Ock, and even like Electro. You know, they're all scientists, right, more or less, and them like teaming up to fix each other and stuff like that. But yeah, so that side of it was like really cool. And then they essentially fix Doc Ock by putting like a chip on his neck to fix the, you know, the chip that's made him lose control of the tentacles, and it's also allowed the tentacles to take control of him. In a way, they, like, you know, they kind of speak to him, and they're constantly in his mind. So once they fix his chip, he becomes a lot calmer. So yeah, mostly who else did they fix?
So they fixed him. They didn't get Sandman. They didn't get
fix Electro, weren't they?
Yeah,
they were about to fix him.
They had the device on Electro, and he's there. You can tell he's uncomfortable. I thought, so when they put the device on Electro, I thought Green Goblin or Norman Osborn had interfered with that device, because as soon as Peter Parker put it on him, he goes, "Man, this don't feel right. I don't like it." And he's talking to Sandman, I think it was. And Sandman's just like, "Hey, look, man, you just gotta do it, and then we can go back home." Good. And I was like, "Ooh, like Green Goblin's defo done something where it's gonna either kill Jamie Foxx or something like that, and then the rest of the guys would turn on Peter Parker and say, 'Yo, you just killed him.'" Yeah, and then they'd like try and kill Peter Parker or something like that. But it turns out it was just his he hadn't made up his mind about whether he actually wanted his powers to be taken from him or not. And the reality is he knew he didn't want his powers taken from him. He didn't want to be fixed, which is what Dr. Octopus was saying before his tentacles got silenced and before he resumed control. So Jamie Foxx had that dissipator thing put on his chest, and that's going around working its way and almost complete. And then they work on Norman Osborn's cure and that kind of green serum thing, and they actually make it. But then Peter Parker, his spidey senses, his tinglies go off, and he's walking out in slow-mo, and they're asking Peter, what's wrong, Peter? And Norman Osborn's walking towards the window with like a kettle or something, and then Peter shoots his hand, sticks it against the window, and then we get who I thought was the MVP of the movie, by the way. We get the Green Goblin version of Norman Osborn coming out.
Oh,
and
so good.
Willem Dafoe, dude.
He's so good.
He's so good as the Green Goblin. Like,
so good.
He sticks his chin out of it. He's like, so a bit like the Joker. But his switch is so good because he's like he's working both of them. And in Norman Osborn, he's like this anxious, afraid type of person who's like he just wants the best, but he knows he has this dark side to him. He's like trying his best to keep it away, and he has no control. But then that change where it's like, so Peter, and I was like, oh, you guy is sick.
Yeah, it was so good. So yeah, I mean, that was the interesting thing. So they put on the dissipator on Electro, and just before it, completes its kind of cycle that it does, he basically convinces, the Green Goblin does, all the villains, that they don't need to be controlled, they don't need to be cured, which didn't take much. Basically say, we don't need the shackles where, we're gods on this planet and all this business.
Yeah, that speech was sick as well.
Yeah, it was sick. Yeah, but I did think that it didn't take him very much convincing to basically flip.
Yeah, who I was annoyed with actually, like obviously Alfred Molina, Dr. Octopus, he was just kind of just like, alright, cool, like I'm not gonna engage here because it's a situation where I probably wouldn't win. So he dips, and I'm fine with that. I'm cool. But Sandman, he was given his powers accidentally, a lot like, to be fair, Electro and stuff like that. But he's never necessarily shown an affinity for his powers. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that he kind of just dipped out and then suddenly became part of this group of people. He was like, I don't need to be fixed. I'm just like, wait a sec, bro. Like, I'm pretty sure in Spider-Man 3, the Tobey Maguire one, he wasn't actually like a fan of his powers. He didn't want his powers. All he really wants is to go back and see his daughter, spend time with his daughter. And that's it. He doesn't really care about being the Sandman or anything like that.
Yeah.
And in this movie, he reiterates, I just want to see my daughter, man. And it's like, cool. I get that. Then why did you just dipped and then suddenly you were like, I'm gonna kill every Spider-Man I see. I didn't get that part.
At the same time, though, that to me has always been why he's not been particularly my favorite Spider-Man villain. If I'm honest, he's like got one of the weaker characters. Like, you know, he's just kind of very one-dimensional in a way. Like, he's just like, you know, like you know, like Vin Diesel, like family. His one is my daughter, and like,
He doesn't really have a motive.
What?
Yeah.
He doesn't really have a motive as a villain. He doesn't have any kind of beef with anybody.
That is literally
really.
his motive. Like, he was literally jacking money back in his own universe, right? And stuff like that.
Yeah, for his daughter.
For his daughter, and you're just like, oh, well, okay. Like, you know, and the other part of his character, I suppose, is that, you know, he feels guilt for having killed Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, he doesn't really feel. Like, I don't know. He doesn't really sell that remorse to me very much.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of still like, I'm gonna do what I want, right? But, like, you know, as long as my daughter's okay. But yeah, like, so they all break out, in other words, right? And big fight between Green Goblin and Spider-Man kicks off, which is awesome. Like, Electro does one. He steals.
The arc
this is what I didn't understand, man. I was like, for God's sakes, man! Like, he showed him all the stuff, like all the new technology in his universe, right? Showed Electro the arc reactor, right? Iron Man's arc reactor, and I was just like, he's gonna steal that. And so guess what he did? He stole it, and so using the energy from the arc reactor, that's like the most energy Electro's ever had, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, I'm going to use this and just become the best version of me that you can be. And I was like, well, yeah, man, you do you. They're stupid enough to show you all this awesome tech. So
and that's the other thing. Like, I think really this is the final thing story wise that I didn't like about the movies. Plus, with the fact that, you know, was it really a realistic decision that Spider-Man would actually free them, no matter how naive he is, and try to rehab these villains. But then this was the second one, which was, okay, you can push Spider-Man or Peter Parker's naivety as far as you want, but there's a point where it's like you've made him way too naive.
You made him stupid.
Which is, you've made him stupid. Yeah. And, you know, he's showing them like, oh, this is the technology I have. This is what I can do.
Here's a question for you. I thought that was the machine to create a suit, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think it's basically, it can create anything. So, like, you basically put in a design or whatever.
But what on earth did they use that for?
I think they used it for the time machine in Avengers.
No. I mean, in this film, like, what was the reason that he opened up that machine to show off the arc reactor? To show
they were using
machine?
it
Was
to
that to create
like,
the chip?
The serum for Green Goblin and stuff like that. They created that. The device for Electro, they created that.
Yeah, but they didn't show that machine being used. I don't think. I'm not sure.
No, I think
maybe it was.
They showed a little bit, and the chip for Dr. Octopus, they used it for that as well. So they did use it for all three things, but I was thinking this was like my second main issue with the story and the writing was you've made him so naive, he's making stupid decisions. And I was explaining this to you guys before, whereas like in Star Wars, the prequel trilogy, there are only 2 trilogies we'll speak of on this podcast because the other one doesn't exist. But in the prequel trilogy where you have Anakin becoming Darth Vader, you don't see him making necessarily story-wise stupid decisions. You see him making wrong decisions and how he falls into the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. I'm fine with that. I don't mind seeing a story about a protagonist making wrong decisions, trying to rectify them, failing or succeeding, whatever that might be. They're just wrong decisions. I'm fine with that. In this, though, they've made Spider-Man successively make stupid decisions. Like, why would you do that? There's no way a hero who's been part of the Avengers, who's seen how the other heroes work, and who understands the idea of if I fail, many people will die or be hurt or whatever. He makes continuously stupid decisions. Literally, I think, for me, just so that the story can be told. And I don't like that when a character is made to be stupid or do something just so the story continues down a certain path.
And he's far too influenced as well. Any
Yeah.
kind of message, any kind of like moral or whatever message that somebody gives him, whether that be like Iron Man, Aunt May, Happy or whatever, he takes that on board in a way. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
there's got to be some kind of self development as well. Like, I don't know, like your own character has got to be able to make his own kind of decisions without being heavily influenced. Like, there's got to be some kind of influence, especially somebody especially somebody important like your aunt, right, who's like raised you. But like, you gotta kind of man up and make your own, mind about some of these decisions, and say, you know what, this decision probably isn't the best for me. Maybe this person who has raised me is probably chatting shit and is putting me in a worse position in terms of what I'm supposed to be doing as like the overarching like hero. But that fight was awesome. Had remnants, had like brought back like nostalgia of the fight in the first Spider-Man film with the glider and how he tries to use the glider to kick, because Aunt May's there as well. So they managed to get on the bottom floor, still fighting like flames and stuff everywhere. And the Green Goblin tries to kill Aunt May with the glider. And it looks like he fails, like he knocks her away, but it doesn't look like he stabs her with the glider. And then, the Green Goblin throws a bomb and it explodes. It explodes in Spider-Man's face. It doesn't seem to have much of an effect on him.
Yeah, I thought it would.
Yeah, it hurt him.
I thought it was going to be like a throwback to in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2, sorry.
Harry.
Where Harry gets the bomb blown
Yeah.
up in his face and he gets like all burnt and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's.
I was like, ooh, are we going to get like? Has Tom Holland actually disfigured?
It's 3.
But we didn't get that.
It happens in 3 because remember he was influenced by the symbiote.
In 3. Okay.
Yeah, I need to rewatch that trilogy, But yeah, it was that because it was a little bit of an influence by the symbiote as well, because he kind of has less remorse about it. But yeah, I thought it was going to be that as well for a while, and then it was more about the impact hurting him, so his ribs might be broken and stuff like that. And people need to stop messaging me on WhatsApp, man, unless that's you guys. But that's starting to tick me off. But yeah, so the kind of what happens after that, then I suppose, is he finds that Aunt May's hurt, and she ends up dying. She ends up bleeding out, so she might have got hurt, by getting thrown around, or by getting. She might have actually got hurt by the glider more than we think. It's not clear. So she ends up dying, and then there's a SWAT team that surrounds Spider-Man.
No, she delivers her message as well.
Oh yeah. She drops I forgot. You carry on.
Yeah, so in the other universes, what we see in this movie as well, because Andrew Garfield, both say when they see Tom Holland for the first time, they tell him about how their Uncle Ben's died and stuff like that, and how they've had losses to help him deal with it. But they figure out that basically they were all given a similar message, which is with great power comes great responsibility. And I like that again, but once again, in the context of this movie, I feel like it was the message was twisted a bit.
Yes.
Because Tom Holland's Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility. So I need to go and try and do everything I can to help these villains get to a point where they're not villainous anymore. And I'm just like, yeah, but once again, you're putting people at risk, not just yourself and your friends, you're putting innocents at risk. And it's like, that's not the responsibility that you were supposed to have taken on. The responsibility is to help those who are less fortunate than you, because you have great power. But don't go and put everyone at risk because you also have great power. That's not how it works. So
it felt less impactful in this film, because the whole line is I know there were two, in my opinion, they were too similar, the Amazing Spider-Man and the original Spider-Man trilogy, right? Because it was Uncle Ben dropping that line to him, and him making a decision previously, and him saying, you know what, if I'd listened to Uncle Ben, he was right. If you have this power, you shouldn't use it for vanity. You shouldn't use it for personal gain,
or revenge,
like that. You should use it to help other people, or have some kind of moral responsibility. And this is just felt shallow because she dropped the line, dying, and like you say, it was used to kind of impact the stuff that she was saying about oh yeah, we got to help these what are supposed to be really bad people. In order to cure them, even though that they couldn't be really fixed for the most part.
Yeah, so you're right. She delivers the line, to kind of bolster her own point. On her deathbed, she kind of guilts Tom Holland into following what she said in the first place, which was, we got to help these guys. But that's the direct reason for why she died in the first place. So it's like, wait a sec. You're probably not the only person who's on a cityscape. There's probably going to be tons of people like Aunt May who are going to get killed by these guys. And even on your deathbed, you're still saying you need to help these villains. I'm like, no, don't help these villains. Smack them back to their own dimension.
Time to do one.
Yeah, bro. And because that was those two things in this movie were the worst parts, and their story elements, key story elements, which I was just like, nah, that wouldn't happen. I don't think that would happen. But then the other thing, like you were saying, was I really feel like they should have given Tom Holland Spider-Man some development, self-development, in the sense that he should have said, nah, cuz I'm not gonna follow what you think you're saying, because the reality is Aunt May was in complete shock. She's walking around and stuff like that, but she's just saying, I need to catch a breath. She's 100% in shock, has no idea what's going on, collapses. She's not in the best position to be giving people advice. So
that's the thing, like, you know, in the Marvel films, right? Like, I don't know, like, it's like, obviously my opinion, right? The deaths of like Uncle Ben were impactful. They were there to kind of have an impact on the story. The death of Aunt May had no implication on anything. Like, it's in my opinion like a really lazy form of writing. Like, we're going to make somebody close to this person die, and just because that person's dead, they're automatically going to have some character development to them, or they're going to have a darker edge to their character. Yeah, I'm just like, it's been so overdone, right? That you can basically throw that with almost any character in any film that you've ever watched, and it happens so often, right? Oh yeah, you know what? Let's throw. Like, I almost expected her to die. I think me and you were kind of talking about it a little bit, like during the film. Like, you know, we were just kind of like, she's gonna die. Okay, maybe she's not dead. Oh crap, she's dead. That kind of thing. Because we were just like, you're kind of expecting it in a way. Like, you're kind of expecting it from filmmakers where they're kind of running out of, oh yeah, you know what, this character like needs something to kind of boost him into action. Let's kill the person closest to them, and you're just there like, that's, you know, that doesn't have to be your one-stop shop for resolving all your character deficiencies. And even still, like, you know, like overarching, like a little bit of a rant, right? Throughout the three films, there's very little, in my opinion, character development for Tom Holland Spider-Man character. Like, if they were to make another film, like a fourth Spider-Man film on the back of these, you're kind of like, well, he's kind of in the same position except that he's alone. And we kind of get to that point. So we're kind of running out of time. So what we'll do is we'll kind of go over the next kind of main plot points. So he's, like, you know, being accused by the Daily Bugle of, you know, causing this massive explosion in the building they were in, right, where they were trying to fix these villains. And he's also being accused of, like, you know, being the cause of killing his own aunt, basically. And so MJ and Ned, they don't know where he is. He's gone off to kind of meditate, I suppose, just kind of self-reflect. He's seeing all the things that people are saying about him and all that. And he's just, like, you know, distraught because Aunt May's dead. You know, like the only family really he has, or had now at this point. So they're trying to find out where he is. And it was kind of hinted, like, so they're showing the view of Ned and MJ. It's kind of hinted that Ned has a bit of a tingling sensation, which might be magic. But all of a sudden, like, I don't really have much of an issue with it. But he has the kind of the ring that Doctor Strange uses to open up portals. And to make a long story short, he manages to somehow open up portals. They're trying to open up a portal to see their Peter Parker because they don't know where he is. But they open up two portals, and they get Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and they get Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And it was a whole bunch of fan service, which was just amazing. Like, you know, Tobey Maguire cussing out Andrew Garfield, saying, like, you know, not everybody needs to know, like, you know, the identity of Spider-Man, where he just, like, completely unmasks himself, which was a bit weird, actually.
He doesn't cuss out Andrew Garfield. He cusses out MJ and Ned, because he's just like, oh yeah, I don't carry around like an ID. Yeah. Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield had said the exact same thing. Yeah, so that's why they were like, "What the hell?" So,
but I just thought it's interesting that he comes into their, like, universe, and then he just unmasks himself, and I was like, "What?"
Like, Andrew Garfield is like,
that was a bit strange. Like, you don't know these people, why would you unmask yourself? But for the fan service purposes,
they were also on their side of the pool shouting, Peter, Peter. So he was like,
I
oh,
suppose so,
they,
actually. Yeah, that's a good point,
That's true,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point, actually, now that I think about it, yeah.
But yeah, that scene was cool. Adila, what did you think of how this scene happened? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was quite cool, like, especially when they were trying to make him like prove himself as Spider-Man, like climbing on the walls and all that, the ceiling. Thought
Had
that
to
was really
clean
cool.
the spider webs, the
Yeah.
cobwebs.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the interaction between them two
Yeah,
was
not
just
gonna lie though,
amazing.
like with this scene, I liked the scene. I was really happy, but I was kind of low key. I wanted to be that guy where like they came in dramatic fashion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't mind that. What I really liked about this movie, and I'm pretty sure you guys did too, was the fact that they didn't just kind of make a dramatic entrance and that was it. They were substantial characters in the movie. They did things that were pivotal to the plot, and they aided. They were proper support characters in the movie. They didn't just like appear, try and fight someone, and that was it. So they weren't just there for the nostalgic value. They were actually assisting the movie in furthering the plot, which I really enjoyed. But I was hoping the first time we saw them in this movie would be dramatic. I was hoping
Less
they'd come in.
comedic.
Yeah, not comedic. And in
Yeah.
this, they came in like it was very lackluster. Like they came in, and I was like, okay, that's Andrew Garfield, that's Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
But I was like, but I'm not hyped that they're here. Like I wasn't like, it kind of hit me on a flat note, and I was disappointed by that.
I was okay with it, but that was only because I expected that from Marvel, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my issues with Marvel. They do stuff like that, where like you
Yeah.
know they're like, oh yeah, we won't dramatize. We'll subvert the audience's expectations. Well, instead of coming in dramatic fashion, how about we make them come in a really like nonchalant way or something like that, or like you know. And I'm just like, you've done that a lot, like you know, to the point where I expected you to do that. And so if I'm expecting you to do that, you're not subverting nothing. So it's very, they've done that a lot of times where they just, like, you know, they'll do something which you expect them to do, which is, oh yeah, we want them to make an epic entrance, and it ends up being anything but that. But yeah, I suppose like to kind of speed it along, they go to find Peter Parker. They kind of think about the places they were asking them, like, you know, where would you go if, like, you know, you needed like time to think on all that business. And they were like, oh yeah, they were like comparing buildings, which was hilarious. Like, you know, one of them was saying Empire State Building, and the other one was I can't remember what the other Chrysler Building, yeah. And so they were thinking about I think MJ was saying that I think I know where he is, and they went to another building. I don't know what it is, but they found him there, MJ and Ned, and they all went there, and the two other Spider-Man men. The Spider-Man them. They went there, and it's really cool. Like they got to interact with him, and he was kind of like, "Who are these two guys?" And they, you know, they were sharing, like, you know, the pain of like losing somebody. You know, Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, like, you know, obviously he's lost Uncle. I think he lost Uncle Ben. I can't remember whether Uncle Ben died in it.
Yeah, he lost Uncle Ben
and Gwen Stacy, but I think they were focusing more on the Gwen Stacy angle in this one.
Yeah.
And then obviously Tobey Maguire's one. Sorry?
Anybody's name who rhymes with Ben, Andrew Garfield lost is Ben.
Yeah. Tobey Maguire obviously losing Uncle Ben, and they're kind of saying that, you know, we know what you're going through. You know, you've lost Aunt May or Aunt Men. She changed the name, but Aunt Men, yeah. But yeah. So like, you know, he's basically saying, you know what, I'm like so angry and all this business. So obviously the kind of I want some revenge. So I need to find Green Goblin to beat the shit out of him and all that business. To make a long story short, they all three of them partnered together. They all kind of shared that they all had the same message from their universes. You know, Uncle Ben or Aunt May, which is great. Yeah, comes great responsibility.
And they kind of come together with the agreement of, we're here to help people. That's what we do. I think they say that. They're like, you know, that's what we do. We're Spider-Man. That's what we do. Yeah. And stuff like that. But once again, the previous point I made was, I don't agree that that's what you do. I think you guys think that's what you do. I don't think that's what
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, Spider-Man's all about, you do whatever you can to save people, not you do whatever you can to, you know, save the villains. I mean, I suppose that could come under saving people, but I don't know. It's just a bit strange. But yeah, so they go into a lab and just start building, finishing off some of the cures and some other equipment that they're making. To kind of quickly speed through the rest of it, what happened next then, Muzzy?
They basically just they create a whole bunch of cures for each specific person. So for the Lizard, for Doc Ock, for Sandman, for Electro, and for the Green Goblin. So they make all of those cures and stuff like that. And then they go, basically what Peter does is he calls up J. Jonah Jameson and says, yo, I'm at the Statue of Liberty. If these boys want this cube, they have to come and get it. So everyone meets at the cube, essentially. All the Spider-Mans
Trying to hit me up.
Yeah, yo, I send you my location. Come find me.
These are my deets. These are my deets.
Yeah, I've got my digits here. So they all jump. They all go down there, and the Spider-Mans have kind of rigged up the place so that the cures are located in specific sections, so that they can go around and kind of flit around, grab the cure, hit the people with the cure, and say rehabilitate everyone. So they're still in the mindset of rehabilitate, which is fine because that's what the movie's been about. So they go ahead and do that, and this whole scene was sick. They're fighting at the Statue of Liberty. My favorite thing, a really minuscule detail, but I was telling both of you when Electro's mask, because now he has the arc reactor. He's souped up and he's firing electricity, splitting at light speed and stuff like that. But every time he ejects a huge amount of electricity, his mask shines. His classic mask that we've seen in the cartoons and stuff like that.
It just kind of makes a shape with the electricity and it, the kind of 3-pronged mask.
Yeah, just some prongs on his head, I think it's 5 prongs. And I was like,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, 3 or 5. I think it might be 5 prongs.
I really like that detail. I was like, man, there were probably a whole bunch of people who don't get that.
I saw it the first time.
I know.
And I thought I was seeing things, and then it happened again, and I was like, okay, that's really cool. But I'm still not convinced if that was what they were going for, but I think it was. I think you're right. Because then you pointed it out to me afterwards, and I was like, yeah. So I did see what I saw. But yeah, to make a long story short, because obviously kind of running low on time, massive fight happens. The Spider-Men, all 3 Spider-Mans, they're making funny jokes and all that business, but it's very cool. Just the relationship is very much I know they said it in the film, but it's a brotherly kind of relationship. It was awesome. You had an older brother, the one in the middle, and then obviously the young Tom Holland. So it was just all 3 of them learning how to team up as well, because they always solo, and that is kind of a consistent thing with Spider-Man. From what I remember. In all the content, even when I think he had the opportunity to work with the Avengers in the comics, and he eventually just said, nah, I'm not sure if it was a case of I'm better off solo, but he ended up going solo again because he just worked better that way. But it's the case of them 3 working together, curing Doc Connors. They managed to Doc Ock pops back in. He's still got the chip on him, so he's still his good self, without being influenced by the tentacles. And with his help, they managed to get the arc reactor off of Electro, and they put in that discharge device into him, so he's powered down as well. And I can't remember with Sandman, they put a cure into Sandman, so he ends up losing his sand powers. It was just massive epic fight. A lot of scenes in films involving scaffolding these days, I find in Shang-Chi, they had the scaffolding business going on. I can't remember from the top of my head, but there's another film that I watched, but it is cool, don't get me wrong, but at the same time I'm kind of just you're doing this an awful lot,
Rush Hour, man.
Yeah, Rush Hour. That I'm talking about more modern films, kind of ripping that kind of thing. But then the fight comes with Green Goblin, where I suppose Tom Holland's getting into a position where he's just beating the shit out of the Green Goblin, and then Tobey Maguire steps in to stop Tom Holland, the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, from stabbing the Green Goblin with his glider. But once again, this is where we come into place. Green Goblin's okay, this is my opportunity. So he stabs the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man with his blade on his arm, remember? And I was like, oh my god, are you gonna kill him off? They didn't, which was a good thing because
Thank God,
that's
yeah.
one of my like.
They didn't. But let's be real. With a wound like that
Probably
from
could've.
behind, you were dead, bro. Like
Yeah,
you were
probably. I'm
they
glad they
didn't kill him
didn't because knowing like Marvel and these comic book movies, that is like a like they're kind of like, let's just kill off somebody just to be edgy, or like, you know, if you're gonna kill off somebody, have some kind of meaning behind it. Isn't my kind of my overarching thing. Like, you know, it's got to be some kind of thing. Like, you know, like Uncle Ben, like, you know, Spider-Man blames himself and that kind of thing, you know, in the original trilogy and that kind of thing. That has meaning, that has impact. But I don't know, and just like, you know, not Marvel films aren't the only ones kind of like, you know, that like, you know, the only like people who do this. I suppose it's other kind of films as well. They kind of, it's a crutch. But yeah, like he stabs Tobey Maguire once again. It was one of those like, well, you could have prevented that, right? Like you were standing right in front of the guy. What did you want Green Goblin to do? So Tom Holland kind of like gets over like his kind of dark edge and like revenge kind of mindset and stabs the Green Goblin with the serum, and he ends up becoming Norman Osborn, and he's all like, oh, like frail and everything. And yeah, I mean, I suppose to kind of speed things along, that whole kind of scene, that whole thing was just amazing. Willem Dafoe was just amazing as well, crazy amazing. And then Doctor Strange pops out during this whole thing, and quite impressed that he's managed to kind of help all these villains. But now, like, you know, the actual universe is starting to crack. I think that was because. The spell got it was exploded by he put a bomb into that cube which had that spell, that multiverse spell, and the Green Goblin basically destroyed it. But in so doing so, the entire universe started cracking, and the implication being that every person in every universe that knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man is going to be flooding the universe. So Doctor Strange then tries to close all these cracks, but it turns out the easiest way to do this is to do what was originally intended with the spell, which is to make every single person forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, thus kind of rendering the plot kind of useless throughout the entire film in a way.
Yeah, because it takes him back to a point where he's kind of before this trilogy. As in, like, he had everything in this trilogy. Everyone knew, as in Avengers knew who he was, all that stuff. He had so much tech, so many things, so many allies. And now he's back to a point where there's nothing. It's just him. So it's like back to the Tobey Maguire trilogy again.
MJ's forgotten who he is. Ned's forgotten who he is. Everybody in his universe is forgotten. All the people, and like, you know, the cool thing was like the goodbye scenes between the Spider-Man. They get sent into their universes. The villains get sent back into their universes. And then, like, you know, he says to MJ and Ned that I'll find you guys and I'll tell you that I'm Spider-Man. Which, you know, if you've watched a few films at this point, you kind of know when they say something like that, they probably don't mean it. Like, and it actually surprises me when they go the other direction and they say no. Like, you know, they actually do tell him and like they start the relationship over again. That one's quite interesting. But so, like, you know, to fast forward, you know, everybody forgets who Spider-Man is. Even Doctor Strange, all the Avengers, everybody in this universe forgets. And then he's left on his own. He goes to a cafe where MJ's working, and Ned's there. And I think he just kind of sees, you know, they're okay, they're happy, and all that. Also, like, you know, like he sees that, you know, MJ's got a cut on her eye, and I think he's probably thinking internally, like, you know, she's just gonna get hurt if I tell her that I'm Spider-Man again. And I think that was kind of like the overarching kind of theme in a way as well. Like, you know, he was kind of saying, oh, you know, this is all my fault and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, the ending was he basically didn't tell them he's Spider-Man. And so he's on his own. He's got his own. Happy doesn't even know who he is. He gets an apartment. He gets his own kind of thing going on. It doesn't really say, like, you know, whether he's got a job or anything. But he makes his own Spider-Man costume, which is the classic Spider-Man colors. I can't tell if it's the actual classic Spider-Man costume. There's a couple of them that like seem to vary depending on who's, you know, being. Actually, even with the same artist, remember I said that they had like the kind of round Spider-Man logo on the back, and sometimes they didn't. It was like a different, like, you know, like an actual, more realistic looking spider. So I couldn't tell whether it was like the classic looking Spider-Man costume, but Yeah, like it ends in classic fashion, I suppose, with Spider-Man just kind of swinging through the city. But yeah, a bit of a somber kind of ending in a way, just a very sad ending. Like they tried to like make it happy with the music and all that, but the reality was you were kind of like, well, he lost a lot, gained very little. He lost a lot, gained very little. And once again, my issue with Marvel films, like I've got many of them, is it's all just feels like a setup for another thing. Like it's all a setup for, it's either a show or it's another film. This just felt like a setup as an excuse for the Doctor Strange multiverse. I think that's a show. I don't think that's a film.
No, I think
is that a series or
it's a movie. It's the second Doctor Strange movie, which is going to be.
Is it okay?
Multiverse of Madness, I think.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I thought that sounds like a series name, so that's why I kind of went for that.
No, it's going to be the second movie for Doctor Strange, but that's going to encompass. It's going to encompass Wanda after WandaVision, which we haven't watched.
Yeah. And the repercussions of this multiverse spell, I suppose, that he's casted here. They had that was like the ending. Right at the end, after the credits finished, it was like a minute and a half trailer, I think, 2 minutes probably, of showing the Doctor Strange movie as it is. I thought it was a series. In the middle, they had that scene with Venom, which made no sense. They showed at the end of Venom 2 that, he's ended up in Tom Holland, Peter Parker's universe. And he basically just ends up sitting there asking some bartender about, explain like the Avengers, I think it was. And that
he's talking about like Thanos and stuff like that, and how everyone got erased from.
Yeah, and it just shows him getting teleported back into his universe again, but he's left a little bit of the symbiote in this universe. So the implication, I suppose, the assumption being that symbiote is probably going to play some part in the next Tom Holland movie if there is going to be one, which wasn't made clear, but it's got to be at this point, really, isn't it? But I mean, so I mean, what did you guys think overall about the film? I suppose to kind of end this after giving that kind of long recap, what did you guys feel about the film? You go first, D.
Yeah, I really liked it. I thought the scenes were all well done. It looked visually very appealing, but I did think that bits of the plot were kind of lacking, and they were just done to kind of move the story forward. But at the same time, you do kind of feel that the character of Spider-Man, especially Tom Holland's one, he hasn't really learnt much from obviously his previous two movies where he's constantly made mistakes. He has adult figures like Iron Man telling him that this is probably not the best decision for you to do things in a certain way, but I feel like he hasn't really learnt much from them. But at the same time, he has learnt a bit in terms of responsibility, his ability to be a team worker, and also obviously that was a main point of the actual with all the other two Spider-Mans as well, being able to actually be part of a team. But yeah, I thought it was good, but it was just very, I wouldn't say bittersweet, I would just say it's quite a bitter ending.
Yeah. So I agree with most of the somber ending, but all in all, a really, really good movie. I by far the best of the Home trilogy, the Tom Holland trilogy. Yeah, the Homeboy trilogy. So by far the best of those of the three. I really enjoyed it. I thought, like we've said, there were elements of the story which were really weak in terms of decision making, how far the naivety of Spider-Man. I thought some characters were kind of useless to the plot. Like Aunt May was essentially just there as a driver for his kind of his moral side and his revenge side, that darkness that takes over him. So I'm fine with her, but I feel like Zendaya or MJ didn't really serve too much of a purpose in this movie besides actually providing closure for Andrew Garfield, which we forgot to talk about. That was a sick scene.
That was such a good scene.
That was a really good scene.
That hurt me here, bro.
Yeah, same.
So the scene we're talking about is during the fight. I can't believe we missed this scene because this was like one of my favorite scenes. But during the fight with the the villains on the scaffolding of the Statue of Liberty, MJ falls from the scaffolding, like similar, giving similar vibes So I suppose even like the Mary Jane falling in the first film when the Green Goblin drops her, but I think it was more of a reference to the Gwen Stacy fall in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. She drops, and obviously Garfield tries to catch Gwen Stacy but fails, and he just about gets her, but her back smacks against the ground, ending up killing Gwen Stacy. So that doing a callback to that. MJ's falling down, and Tom Holland can't get to her, but Garfield sees her, so he tries to save her, and he catches her this time, and he lands on the floor. But then you see his face, and he's like tearing up because obviously he remembers how he failed to save Gwen Stacy, and I was just like, the heart. No! I was like, oh my god, man! Like, you can't do this, man. That hurt so much. I was like, oh, dude, that's brutal.
So that was probably one of the best scenes in terms of how it was done.
Oh, it was acted well as well. Yeah,
and I think actually one of the things that I really liked about this movie I felt Zendaya really wasn't she didn't play too much of a part in this movie. I didn't like that Ned suddenly was able to use this ability, whereas because literally this is the only movie where he mentions his Lola. I think it was saying, he's a magical boy and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, you're Maho Shoujo. He's like, I'm a magical boy. I transform.
I'm a real boy.
I didn't like how that suddenly came in out of nowhere, and he's instantly able to create portals when Doctor Strange found it so difficult to create portals. But I think there's a difference in mentality there, where Doctor Strange was very kind of, he was like, I don't believe in this magic bull stuff.
You're talking about before he became Doctor Strange? You're talking about when he was still learning?
Whereas Ned was kind of like, I am magic, I can do this. So there's a difference in mentality, but I still think it's kind of, you shouldn't be able to just use an ability because you.
I think I would have normally have called out something like that, but I don't know like the lore about like whether whether Ned's an actual character in the series. But I've kind of, I don't know, like my mindset has changed. Like in a way, it's kind of like I ignore those things that would normally anger me like that. It's like where I'm just like like the kind of, I think that like when the Star Wars trilogy, the new one dropped, it was like they're calling her Mary Sue, that kind of thing, where like all of a sudden she gets like powers, and you're just like, how, when, where, when this was established to have taken years and decades or something, like that kind of thing. And I think it's probably ever since Star Wars I was just like, you know what, if I'm gonna enjoy this film, I'm gonna have to ignore certain aspects. But I mean,
I really liked it, and I feel like the way that this movie was written, in particular for Andrew Garfield, it really, really made me happy, because I felt like a lot of people were like on the fence about his movies, but this really kind of brought him. I felt like better script writers gave him a better opportunity, because he's a good Spider-Man.
It gave him character development. They gave him more character development than the. I didn't necessarily think the Maguire's one actually needed any character development. The interesting thing about that original trilogy is its closure, and that's what I don't like about the MCU. There's very little in the way of closure unless your character ends up dying. Like there's very little closure. I think Captain America probably got a bit of closure, where he kind of just kind of dipped in the at the end of the Avengers movies. But it's there's very little closure in them. But that original, so he didn't really need much in the way of character development. It was more about him kind of imparting some of that wisdom to the other two Spider-Man. And so Andrew Garfield's one did get some character development, more so than Tom Holland's one, I think.
Yeah, because it was like with Garfield, there was that scene about like self-talk, where Toby's like, no, like don't say that you're useless and stuff like that. You're amazing. Say you're amazing. Funny because he's the amazing. So that bit of wisdom, but then seeing like, because Garfield seems to have had quite a rough time of it, because he's his girlfriend actually died, and then the way his Uncle Ben died and stuff like that. So I like the fact that they supported him and developed him in this movie, and then gave him kind of a little bit of closure, because he managed to actually save his girlfriend this time. So I thought that was really cool.
I mean, overall, I really enjoyed this film. Like, I think the way I kind of broke it down to you guys is the first two of this Home trilogy with Tom Holland. they were films that could have been very good in my opinion, but in my opinion they were just good. And I was saying to you that I thought they were just good based on, I thought the villains were generally quite weak or not as good. I thought Vulture had in the first one he had quite. I think they did a pretty good job with him, but even still, he wasn't like, you know, the kind of hard, like, you know, the really difficult villain to face off against. Like, you know, compared to, let's say, Green Goblin in the first Spider-Man movie. You know, where there was like real like death implications and stuff like that, like, you know, and he knew who he was and everything, like, you know, Vulture had a bit of that, but it just felt less threatening. I don't know what it was. So I felt the first two films were held back by the plot and the villains. I thought this film was very good, but not great. Like, not like, oh my god, this is the best, this is really 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 good, like, oh my god. So I just think it was very good, like, which is still a good thing, like, you know, it's fantastic. It was probably one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe films I've watched. I'll probably have to like watch it again or something like that, but I think this is probably the best one that I've watched, or at least one of them. But once again, it's the thing to kind of stop it from being a great film was like the overall plot. And but this time the villains were really good. I'm not really sure like where Sandman really fit in, if I'm honest. And the interesting thing is, just on a kind of side note before we finish, is that he was actually meant to be the main villain for Spider-Man 3, and then like Sony Studios and all that, they kind of shoehorned Venom in. Like Sam Raimi wanted Sandman to be the main villain, and I was kind of like, but I don't know, man, like, you know.
If that was gonna be his motivation and stuff like that,
I don't know about that.
Like,
I don't know. Like, I've never been the hugest fan of Sandman, but I think that's come across fine. But yeah, I suppose. I mean, this first episode has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would. Like, you know, I wanted this also be kind of an opportunity for us to talk about other things, like, you know, music that we've been listening to, anime or manga or games that we've been playing, you know, that kind of thing. But I think we're probably about the hour and a half mark, and I mean, if anybody's like tuned into the show, just let us know what you think about the movie. You know, like, it's interesting to get a different perspective. Like, everything that we've said is like, you know, our own opinions. Sometimes me and Mosi generally have a similar taste in movies. Kind of have. But it's nice to get like a, you know, kind of argument going, or what somebody else thinks about certain things. We're gonna have different guests on occasionally as well. It's gonna be mainly us two running the podcast. Dee will occasionally jump in, I suppose, if she's watched the film with us. The next episode's probably gonna revolve around Matrix Resurrections. We're gonna go watch that next week at some point. I mean, not really much more to add. I suppose we're still trying to find a name for this podcast at the moment. By the time this uploaded, we may have come up with a name, but you guys will find out before us, I suppose. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.